Addressing Gettysburg.
The Gettysburg Museum of History, located right here in the center of Gettysburg, PA. Owner and curator Eric Dorr grew up here and has spent his life collecting and preserving history through artifacts ranging from the Civil War, the Battle of Gettysburg, World War II, presidential items, pop culture, and more. His museum is free and open to visitors Wednesday through Sunday, 11 to 5 p.m., where you can stop by and immerse yourself in some of the most amazing artifacts that you would never believe exist in the middle of Gettysburg. If you're a fan of Band of Brothers and Everything Easy Company, you'll love his exhibit featuring the Dick Winters collection and artifacts from D-Day. You can even own your own piece of history by buying one of the many relics they have for sale in the museum and on the website GettysburgMuseumofHistory.com. The Gettysburg Museum of History is a non-profit 501c3 organization with a foundation that allows all purchases and donations to keep the museum operating and open free of charge. They have been featured on the History Channel, the Travel Channel, the Smithsonian Channel, and the Science Channel. Now you can check them out on American Artifact, the series on the YouTube channel, The History Underground. So that's the Gettysburg Museum of History at 219 Baltimore Street or the GettysburgMuseumofHistory.com.
From the Gettysburg Museum of History Studios, you're listening to Addressing Gettysburg.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to this episode of Addressing Gettysburg's Ask a Gettysburg Guide. And today we are talking about the Irish Brigade, a famed and fabled and legendary brigade that fought in our Civil War here at Gettysburg. And we're going to talk with two licensed battlefield guides today. Of course, you know Chris Army, who has been with us before. Hello, Chris. How are you?
Good. How's it going, Matt?
Good. Welcome back.
Thank you.
And we have a new guy on, John Fitzpatrick. John has had a busy life. He's been a guide for 21 years, number one. He was an attorney for 32 years at a company called Chevron. You might have heard of them. He was also arbiter, aviator, and a veteran. He served 5.5 years active duty as a U.S. Marine pilot, flying 140 combat missions in Vietnam. We should just have you on to do a show about that. That would be really cool. Then 23 years active reserve as a PA Air National Guard command pilot. Then in the Pentagon, in the U.S. Air Force Reserve, in legislative liaison, and lastly as a JAG officer. Wasn't there a question at a hearing recently about JAG officers? There was.
Yes. It was yes. Do you want me to recall it?
Do you recall it?
I recall it was Hegseth was being questioned and he used the term jag-off.
Yes.
And the Congress questioner asked for a greater explanation. He said, we have a lot of civilians and people here. I'd rather just say it means JAG officer.
Right.
And JAG means Judge Advocate General. It's a way of calling someone a military lawyer.
I'm guessing then that means that the rank and file aren't fond of JAG officers. Is that what that whole JAG-off thing?
I'm not going to get into his mind, Tony.
Okay, gotcha. Here in the rank of colonel, and has been awarded 8 Air Medals, 1 U.S. Air Force Commendation, 3 Meritorious Service Commendations, and 1 Presidential Unit Citation, and others. Jesus, I couldn't even pass the guide exam. He is an attorney in good standing before the highest courts in California, Pennsylvania, and D.C., as well as SCOTUS. He brings those life experiences to his tours at Gettysburg and to our podcast right now today. Welcome, John. Thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you for asking me, Matt.
You're very welcome, and I actually...
And Chris, too.
Well, I knew I would need some serious backup today, so I could think of no one better than John.
And with a name like Fitzpatrick, I'm assuming you know about the Irish Brigade.
A little bit.
Yeah.
I'm about to say oy vey, and that is not Gaelic.
Not even close. Are you guys hot in here?
I'm good.
You're good? Okay. I'm dying.
Well, Lucy, that's okay.
No, that's fine. I'm going to be down to nothing yet at the end of this thing. Okay, so we're going to start talking about the Irish Brigade here. And let's start with their service from the beginning to the end. How did they, well, not the end, but we're going to go up through Gettysburg. How did they get put together, as it were?
You want me to kind of roll through some of that, and John can add some color?
Go ahead. Sure.
Okay, so Irish Brigade, we're talking 2nd Brigade, 1st Division, 2nd Corps, the Red Trefoil men. Army of the Potomac, they lost more men than any other brigade in the 1st Division of the 2nd Corps. And the 1st Division of the 2nd Corps lost more men than any other federal division. So these guys are tough fighters.
And you're talking the whole war? Or
yes.
Okay.
Yep. In the war. Over the course of the war, the Irish Brigade lost over 4,000 men. 961 killed or mortally wounded, which ranks as 3rd among all the brigades in the Union Army. So tough unit, for sure. The units at Gettysburg, they're reduced in several aspects down to just a couple of companies. 63rd New York, 69th New York, the Fighting 69th, 88th New York, 28th Massachusetts, 116th Pennsylvania.
Do you have the numbers, how many each unit had here at Gettysburg? Because it's...
not off the top of my head, but it's a total of 532 soldiers at Gettysburg, 198 killed, wounded, captured.
Well, here, so this is from Brad Gottfried's brigades at Gettysburg. Mm-hmm. Two of the regiments, 63rd and 69th New York, each numbered about 75 men. And the 88th New York could only boast 90. Private John Noonan of the 69th New York called it a miserable remnant of a splendid regiment. As a result, the 3 regiments were combined during the Gettysburg campaign and fought under one green flag and one national standard. Even smaller was the 116th Pennsylvania, which mustered but 60 men. And the 28th Massachusetts was the only one that resembled a regiment here, and it carried 224 on its rolls. So that, and then when you read about, as we'll get into it, the fighting they did, it's like with those small numbers, like it's amazing anybody was left, especially when you think of the numbers they were facing. I'm thinking of Stony Hill, but go ahead, continue.
Yeah. John, you'll notice throughout the podcast that Matt likes to jump ahead on subjects on you.
That's right. I'm going to jump back as soon as you're done.
So we like to haul him back a little bit sometimes.
Yeah. It's a natural ADD I was talking about
before.
This
is the first time Chris and I have done this, so we're working our way through this.
Yeah. So anything to add as far as the units here at Gettysburg before I talk a little bit about the foreign service of the Irish Brigade?
No, I'll go back and how they started as the militia in New York City.
Okay, why don't you take that?
Okay, if you want to go back, okay. Yeah. Well, we have to drop back a little further. There's the officer who recruited the 3 New York regiments was Thomas Francis Meagher, Meagher, and I've been told you're supposed to pronounce that Mar.
Right.
Not Meagher.
Meagher.
So Thomas Francis Meagher was born in Ireland, and he was part of the Revolution of 1848. And he was a great orator, a lawyer, and when he was brought up on charges, he could have been executed, and he did not shout. He said, "I do not abhor the sword, my lord. I don't stigmatize the sword, my lord. I need the sword." So he sent to prison Van Diemen's Island, southwest of Australia, escapes, makes it to San Francisco, makes it to New York. And it was either 1849, 1850, or 1851. I've read 3 versions, but the 69th New York State Militia was formed as state militia in New York City, and he was the acting major. So they do what militias do, and when the president, after the Confederates fired on Fort Sumter, asked for 75,000 volunteers, the 2nd regiment that marched out of New York City was the 69th New York.
Okay.
They fought at Bull Run. They tried to form a square. They tried to protect in the retreat, the Stone Bridge, and they had to retreat with everybody else. So Meagher of the sword, because that's how he talked. He was known as Mar of the Sword, trained them, and I've been laughingly criticized for this, but he goes back to the Battle of Fontenoy in the Austrian Revolution, the War of Austrian Succession. There were 6 regiments of Irish who left Ireland. By the way, they were called wild geese, because they would hide in ships with friendly captains, and on the manifest he would put wild geese so the British port authorities would not inspect for them, and they would sneak out and fight to learn military skills in anybody who's fighting the British. So the War of Austrian Succession was... I'm Anyhow, it was the French versus the British. And at the end of the day, the French were about to leave, Marshal de Saxe, and an officer says, "Sir, we have reserves. We have 6 companies of Irish Brigade." And they marched against Her Majesty's Coldstream Guards.
Ah, yes.
About the best regiment in the British Army to this day. By the way, Fremantle,
Yeah.
who was here. Okay, they marched, and the whole front line was shot down by the Coldstream Guard, and they just kept marching with their bayonets. When they got in close, they fired round balls, because that's what they had in 1745.
Right.
Meagher never forgot that. So, to jump to what Chris is talking about, all 4 of the regiments, except the 28th Mass, had the 69 caliber buck and ball. And which meant they were surrendering yardage all the way across the Wheatfield. And they couldn't stop to let the 28th Mass fire. So that was on purpose. Yes, that was on purpose.
I mean, on purpose that they carried buck and ball.
Because Meagher insisted on it. He's remembering Irish history.
Right.
As a matter of fact, what he said, and there are at least 2, one of Troiani, but there are at least 2 paintings of the first Battle of Bull Run or Manassas, and they're with the fire zouaves too. And he shot off his horse. He pulls out his sword. He says, "Remember Ireland and Fontenoy." He never, ever, ever forgot that. But the bottom line is these guys are firing buck and ball. That's a lot less effective until they get
unless you're real close, right?
So, an effective range of about 100 yards, John, for buck and ball?
Yes.
Versus 400 yards with rifle.
So he never forgot. He
rather have the rifle.
One more thing in terms of background. He never forgot he was famine Irish. In 1845, the potato blight hit. They had 8 million people in Ireland. By 1850, they were down to 5 million people. 1 million had literally starved to death, and the other 2 million went to places like Canada, the United States, and Australia.
Okay.
This is motivating Meagher the whole time. This is what drives these guys. So that's part of the background I wanted to share.
Okay, cool. Now, so they get to Gettysburg. A brigade at Gettysburg should be, what, 1,200 to 2,500? 1,500 average, right?
At Gettysburg.
At Gettysburg.
Yeah.
These guys are 500 men.
Right.
And at the beginning of the war, depending on how many regiments you have, you're looking between 3,000 and 5,000 men in a brigade, on paper at least, right?
Yes.
So how is it that they get whittled down to 500 men? Did disease ravage them at some point? Or was this all combat, or was it a combination of the two?
Yeah, they're gonna see some hard fighting, from Bull Run all the way up to Chancellorsville prior to Gettysburg.
Now, let me.
Can I elaborate?
Go ahead.
Up until right around Chancellorsville, if you had casualties in your regiment, you could recruit troops into that regiment, build it back up. At least 2 or 3 times, Meagher would go back to New York. The great orator he was, 3,500, we're down. I'll get you back up. I'll get you up to 4,000. Well, both the president and Stanton, I would never say there's politics get involved into military decision, but they said, we are no longer going to recruit to existing regiments. We're going to form new regiments because the newspapers will report it. And I, the president, and Stanton want the Confederates. Oh my God, we're up to the 151st Pennsylvania. So we're not going to replenish the Irish Brigade. So they're down to 530 because they're really good fighters. But and Meagher, if you want to get to it, quits.
Yes.
In May of 62 because he's upset with that.
So Michael, 6 Questions Lens is on the phone, and I think that was your question, Mike, wasn't it?
Mike doesn't get any questions. He has passed the written part of the guide exam, and he should know all this. So no questions, Lens.
Mike has a question. I'm looking at it in here, and it says, I'm asking about why the Irish Brigade, low on numbers specifically, was not there allowed to recruit up to full strength. And then John beat you to the punch there, Mike. You got another one while we have you on the line?
I do, and this one actually comes from Debbie.
Hi, Debbie.
Is there a subcategory for somebody else that asks the questions through Mike?
Yeah, proxy questions, Debbie.
Yeah.
Proxy questions. Were they all Irish? Was it the entire Irish Brigade entirely Irish?
Oh, that's a good one.
No. The 116th Pennsylvania had other soldiers who were not Irish, and they, because of that, insisted that they carry the blue regimental flag, which is standard for U.S. Army regiments. The other 4 regiments carried the green flags because they were 90+% either Irish directly or it's first-generation Irish.
Was there a large percentage or majority in the 116th that was Irish?
Don't know the answer to that question.
Okay.
I have to get back to
Because St. Clair Mulholland was Irish.
You're darn right.
With a name like that, you better be, right?
Yeah.
So, but that could have been just not because he was leading a bunch of Irish men. It just happened.
That's from Pennsylvania. So he was the Pennsylvania regiment, and he was from Philadelphia, and he recruited a lot of Irish. But they were also given some people.
Some non-Irish.
Not Irish.
Okay.
Excuse me.
Anything else, Mike or Debbie?
So my question is this: off of that, how did the Irish or Irish immigrants in that brigade feel about the non-Irish within that brigade?
Because we're always the Irish. We're always picked on. Nobody likes us, right? We're always the dirty, low down, unwanted people.
So I'll tell you what.
Did we not want other people in our regiments?
Let me make an overall statement, and I'll let John and you guys fine tune it.
Okay. Yeah.
Because as you know, there's another blended. I'll use that term, blended regiment, the 39th New York, the Garibaldi Guard. Men of all sorts of different nationalities. And I would say that while there are probably examples, if it had been documented, I have never seen it, but examples of, some of that kind of racism, if you will, inside some of these regiments. I think when it comes down to it, once you've been in a battle and the guy next to you has fought as hard as you have, then
that all goes away.
That probably all goes away.
Yeah.
And having said that, there's going to be examples of the other side too, where, somebody doesn't perform well in battle, but by that time, it's probably a little more individualistic.
As opposed to the whole group.
As opposed to the whole group.
Except for the 11th Corps Germans.
Well, again, another, and I think one of your questions, asked about that. It's not that the 11th Corps, the Irish Brigade, the Garibaldi Guard, it's not that these guys were not good soldiers.
Right.
Sometimes they were in a predicament. 11th Corps is a great example of that.
Yes.
It's how they were led.
That's how they were led.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right, Mike, anything else?
Nope, that's it. Thank you.
That's like a question and a half, isn't it?
It was, and it was in the proxy question. I don't even know how to count that. Yeah. Oh, that's the half? Okay. Yeah. I thought there were 3 questions in there. But so I forgot to mention in the beginning, and I am so sorry. I wish you had stayed on the line. But Mike Bariski is in the back there operating the cameras today. So welcome, Mike. Hello. I'm sorry I didn't introduce you.
Oh, I didn't even notice.
Oh, shut up. I saw your call in the queue there. Oh, why didn't you introduce me? You should have stayed on so I could have taken it. Go ahead, John.
Mike, the flip side of did they fight amongst each other is the way they felt, particularly in December of 1962. They're getting down to 530. The editors in New York City, the Irish American newspaper, published this. To keep them where they are now and they're in reduced condition is not mere cruelty, it's a crime. You had the women in New York, the family saying, these men are being used as cannon fodder.
Yeah. Repeatedly,
General Meagher had written to the Secretary of War, Stanton, requesting permission to recruit fresh volunteers to rebuild the brigade, and Stanton's reply was a stony silence.
So that was kind of a question I was going to ask before I took Mike's call. The Irish, weren't really well treated or liked. So do you think they were actually used as cannon fodder, or is that just kind of the way it felt to the wives? Because I always interpreted that number, like before I, read anything about anybody. I just saw that number and I was like, well, they're Irish. They probably made them go first all the time,
I don't think so. But I think I would put a positive slant on that.
Go ahead.
More than once throughout the Civil War, When they were marching across the field, Confederate officers will look at each other and say, "Here come those damn green flags again."
Yeah. So they were good fighters.
Good fighters.
Yeah.
And there's this issue of the Fighting Irish, if you want to ask about that. But the Fighting 69th, what I have read is right before Fredericksburg, when they were briefing Lee about the field, when a chicken couldn't live in that field, they mentioned that, and he said, the Fighting 69th.
Okay.
That is reported to have come from Lee's comment on what they were about to expect.
So they had some respect.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. But that's kind of the double-edged sword, I guess, about being good fighters, is that you're also going to be relied upon by your own generals to go in and take care of business.
That's fair.
But so,
when we get into
so
the
in other words,
field, they're not the only ones going into.
Well,
the
that's true. Yeah. But it's not so much that it's like, who cares about those Irish? You know, we can lose them. It's they're damn good, so they're the right guys for the job.
That's my.
Yeah. I like to think of it that way better too.
I think both considerations were out there.
Yeah.
I think the second one was the dominant one, and it was ultimately respect for them.
Yeah. All right. So let's move on in their story. Where the hell did we leave off?
Well, we went back to 1850.
Right.
And then we went to 1745. But I guess one more thing I could say in terms of Meagher. Mm-hmm. He was the acting major. His commander was Colonel Corcoran.
Yeah.
Okay, this is very important in terms of what leads up to the Civil War. It's now, I think it's October 11th or October 18th, 1860, and the Prince of Wales is coming to town. And the governor says, we're going to hold a parade for the Prince of Wales this October. He's the son of Queen Victoria. He will become Queen Edward VII when she dies. And Corcoran says, no, we know these people. They starved us to death. They didn't take care of us. They've been persecuting us for 700 years. And he is court-martialed.
Okay.
Okay, that was October 11, 1860. Court-martial hadn't quite convened when April 12th, 13th, 14th, and 15th happened. And when the Irish or the 2nd Brigade to march out of this regiment to mark out of New York City, all court-martial charges were dropped.
Okay.
Now, the women of the Irish Brigade, the war hasn't even started yet. There is something called the Prince of Wales flag. It says, in commemoration of October 11th, 1860. And that's the flag the 69th New York State Militia carried into the first Battle of Bull Run. That was that green flag.
Okay.
And based on my research, it was temporarily in the New York State Military Museum in Albany, but it belongs to the 69th New York Army National Guard, which is still serving, is at 25th and Lexington Avenue in New York City.
At Gettysburg, though, they weren't carrying the green flag. Is that correct?
No.
No, that's not correct, or no, they weren't?
No, that's not correct.
Oh.
There were 2 green flags. The first ones were shot up so badly that they had issued a second green flag.
Okay.
But the 116th Pennsylvania carried the blue flag. The 3 New York regiments and the Pennsylvania regiment carried the second green flag, which was from Tiffany's, which the women bought for them. But the 28th Mass, who came in after, I think, right at Antietam, still had the first green flag. So there were 4 green flags, 3 of which were the second green flag. The first for 28th Mass had the first, and the blue of the 116th Pennsylvania.
Okay, so it wasn't that they were sent home for repairs or anything like that. They had replacements.
Shot up.
Yeah. So they had to replace them.
Exactly.
There's nothing to repair.
That's right. It got to that point.
It was just rags.
Exactly.
Okay. So go ahead.
So that was bringing us up to the eve of the war, and that's what Chris was covering.
All right. Go ahead, Chris.
And so as John mentioned, the 69th was the 2nd Regiment to march from New York City in response to the request. And you often see them referred to as the 69th New York State Militia.
Yeah.
They're the 69th Regiment, led by Colonel Corcoran. He's born in County Sligo, Ireland in 1827. There's a picture of he and Meagher and some of the men around Washington, D.C., near one of the siege gun carriages. they will build and man Fort Corcoran in the spring of 1861 near the Capitol. So they'll spend some time there.
So he gets the fort named after him right away?
Yeah.
Didn't have to do anything special, just gets the fort named after him.
Well, he's the colonel.
Wow, good for him.
Yeah.
Did you get a fort named? You were a colonel. Did you get a fort named after you?
No, I did not.
Oh, sorry, John.
But
Fitzpatrick
I think it
sounds
was
good.
in honor of. There's actually a national park brochure on all the forts around.
Yeah.
And Fort Corcoran was one of them.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't mean to derail you.
No, it's okay. That's okay. Battle of Bull Run in July of 61. They're going to go into the fight piecemeal. There's a painting of this by Don Triani. And as John has already mentioned, Meagher is shown there as his horse, being shot out from under him, extending his arm and his sword towards the colors of the 69th New York, encouraging the men to go forward. Colonel Corcoran is captured. He's offered parole in exchange for refusing to take up arms against the Confederacy. He refuses that, and he will not be exchanged until 13 months later. He's appointed Brigadier General of Volunteers, and he recruits Corcoran's Irish Legion while commanding a division of the 22nd Corps in the defense of Washington. His horse is going to fall on him while he's riding alone. He fractures his skull and ends up dying from that wound in December of 1863.
No helmets back then.
No helmets.
All right, then who takes over?
Well, Meagher, as we talked about, his horse had been shot out from under him, and from that day, he's acting as a major for the regiment. He's going to spring to his feet, and as John mentioned earlier, points to the flag with his sword and says, "Remember Ireland and Fontenoy," to tie that back together. So what else we got here? So. Going forward, the next battle that we'll talk about is the Battle of Antietam. They're under, is it now General Meagher, John? Is it?
I think that's right.
I think he's general by now. They're serving in the 1st Division under Major General Israel Richardson, who gets mortally wounded at Antietam. They're committing guys piecemeal, and that has a pretty bad effect on the Irish Brigade in particular, against the sunken road. They're leading a fight against sunken road, and I know it's always around St. Patrick's Day. The Rangers down there to Antietam, I don't know if they still do it or not, but for a long time they did a
drinking in the sunken road.
Specific walk on the Irish Brigade, and you can actually follow their path in. And I went on that walk several times, and it's amazing how much you can't see until you're on top of it. It's a broad hill going up, and then almost instantly you're right on the sunken lane. So,
well, yeah, actually, the last time I was up there, and we were down in the sunken lane, and we were talking about the Irish Brigade and looking at the hill, and I was like, God, that's close. I mean, it's right. You're right. Like, it's right there.
But because they're coming up the other side of the hill, what do you think the rebels see first?
The flag.
The flag.
Yeah.
They know they're coming.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They're waiting for them.
And then once they're visible, they're silhouetted and just right there. Yeah.
Yes.
So Antietam obviously is a very difficult battle for them.
What are the casualties they received there?
I don't have that listed, Matt.
I know this. We were talking about Gettysburg.
Unprepared about
that. Was unfair of me to ask.
I have Fredericksburg and Mary Sites, but I don't have.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we're going to get to that next.
Yeah. So, do you want to take Fredericksburg, John? Chat a little bit about that. That seems to be an important battle for the.
And actually, if there's somebody who just donated $5 to ask this question here. Ty Webb says, did the Irish Brigade face off with Confederate Irish at the sunken road at Fredericksburg, or is that a myth? Did gods and generals lie to us?
No, they did not lie, and yes, they did.
They did.
It was Cobb's Legion, and Cobb was mortally wounded, and for the momentarily a Major McMillan of the 24th Georgia.
Okay.
From the same county as Major St. Clair Augustine Mulholland in Ireland. So you had Irish from the same county,
Right,
shooting at each other. So it's true.
so it's hometown boy. Just got to make sure you talk into that mic and not behind it.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So
That's fine. Thanks.
So no, that's good though. So guys from the same part of Ireland, not just Ireland, fighting against each other. Do you think one of the guys at the wall broke down in tears when he saw that he was fighting against? Is that a lie in Gods and Generals?
That was very moving, and it could have happened.
It could have. I wouldn't be surprised, right? We're an emotional people.
You know what we like to say in the guide business, Matt. If that's not true, it ought to be.
It ought to be.
There you go.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
Okay. Real quick, before we move on to Fredericksburg, because I want to get into that a little bit, because that's interesting. We do have a call, and it is on the issue of the flags at Gettysburg. And this person wants to take issue with our answer on that. So Mark Maritato, famous artist of Civil War battle scenes. I have some of your paintings in the hallway now. Mark, hello, how are you? And what is your big beef?
It's not a beef. I just wanted to clarify this question because I've been doing a lot of research on, as you know, I do research on Civil War regiments for my paintings. And I researched the Irish Brigade at Gettysburg, and I have not been able to find one clear, concrete letter or anything stating that they had their green flags at Gettysburg. My understanding is those flags that they had at Fredericksburg, were the 28th Massachusetts flag included, were shot up really badly, and they were sent home after Fredericksburg. So sometime in the spring of 1863, they sent the flags home, and they were waiting for replacement flags, which would have been the Tiffany colors that arrived after the Battle of Gettysburg. So my understanding is I have not ever been able to find any kind of concrete proof that they had their green flags at Gettysburg. And I was just kind of curious, where is this coming from? Because I've not been able to find anything on that.
Okay, so you want to know where we get the information?
Well, I can just answer. My understanding is you're right, but it's one battle before. They were shot up. They were available at Fredericksburg, but not used. They didn't make it into the field until before Chancellorsville. That's my information. Not after Chancellorsville and not at Gettysburg, but I can't point to a concrete letter either.
So, but what you're saying is that the replacements made it by Chancellorsville?
Yes.
Okay. How about that, Mark?
Okay, I'll have to look back into it because my understanding is they arrived after Gettysburg and they had they have the flags. They didn't have the flags during the battle, but like I said, I'll look into it again.
Mark,
and again, it's not a beef.
I know. I was just teasing.
No, that's a very good question and finding it. But do you agree or disagree about the 28th Massachusetts having the first green flag at Gettysburg?
I don't know, and I tend to disagree with that because if the entire brigade's going to send their flags in to be replaced, then they would have sent all of them in. I think instead of, and I think I remember again. I don't have my books in front of me, but my understanding and my recollection is that they sent all their flags in, even the newer one from the 28th Massachusetts, because they were all going to be replaced eventually by the Tiffany colors, and I think the book that I am specifically referring to is Union Blue and Green for Ireland, the Civil War flags of the Irish Brigade. There's a book that was put out. Here, I can actually bring it up for you. But this particular book, and of course, it's not clicking on it. But anyway,
so we can't see it anyway.
This book, I have it in my library. I'm not in front of it right now. I remember specifically that this book specifically mentions that these Tiffany flags were sent after Gettysburg. So that's just my one sticking point is I feel like, people seem to think that the Irish Brigade had these flags at Gettysburg, and there seem to be conflicting accounts. Yes, they had them, or no, they didn't. But I tend to think that if they sent their flags in to be replaced, they would have sent all the brigade's flags in, all the green ones. But
Okay. The only I'm looking. Go ahead. I'm looking at an image.
No, go ahead.
I'm looking at an image of the 63rd New York second flag and the 69th New York second flag, and in the middle lower right side, each of them are dated November 1862.
Okay.
Now they might not have made it to the field then. Pardon me. What was
Are these the Tiffany flags?
I'm going to call them the second green flags. I think they were the Tiffany ones. The second green flags are.
Might not Tiffany have a record of this?
Oh yes, that should be there.
Yeah.
If Tiffany would have it.
But that doesn't mean that they were necessarily used. You know, Tiffany could say they.
The second green flag in the upper left has the harp and the Irish Brigade. And the harp is very small. And then they have all the campaigns on the right side, presented by the citizens of New York to the 69th. That's the second green flag. The first green flag is largely the first green, is what the 28th Massachusetts has, with the harp in the middle. And it has Old Gaelic at the bottom, as they never retreated before the clash of spears. And that's the one. Right. I think the 28th.
Well, this is an interesting topic there, Mark. Now there's a big mystery that we have to solve.
Well, not unless you watch the movie, because in the movie they use the green flags.
Actually, there you go. Ron Maxwell answered it for us.
I've got Dave Gallen's Pride of Erin.
Right.
And he researches his, and he has the flags the way I described them.
So it's that's interesting.
And they're ready to take on Kershaw. They've crossed the field, and they're ready to fire their first volley. And it's very clear. 116th Pennsylvania has blue. And then the 28th Mass is in the middle. They have the most soldiers, and they have the first shot up, but they have the first green flag.
I don't know. That's interesting. Go ahead, Mark.
My understanding, the Tiffany flags were more for like a show type flag. They weren't really used that much in the field. So again, I'll have to go back and look, but you know, my understanding is, again, they just didn't have them at Gettysburg. They were waiting for replacements, but I could be wrong. I'm not saying I'm not wrong, but that's just always been my understanding.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it anyway.
I look forward to seeing, you know, what else you come up with.
This was good. Like, we had a brawl here, and that was good. I like that. It's like
the Fighting Irish,
like the old days of Jerry Springer.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. So
thank you for the call, Mark.
Can I jump back to
no problem.
Go ahead, Chris.
Jump back to Antietam real quick because a couple things happen. Number one, you know, we talked about the approach and the Confederates seeing the flags first. The 69th will lose 8 color bearers in that action at Antietam. You know, the other thing that I want to mention is Richardson, mortally wounded. He will be replaced for division command by Winfield Scott Hancock. So we see Hancock's appearance as a division commander going forward from there. The third thing that happens, it's an event that takes place in Gettysburg as well, is Father Corby will grant absolution at the Battle of Antietam, but it's on horseback. Where he rides in front of the troops and does an overall absolution that way. So we can talk a little bit more about the absolution here, but
that's the most famous one, the one here, right? But okay. So we were at Fredericksburg.
Yep.
Now, Fredericksburg, big scene in Gods and Generals, of course. And how well did they do in that movie as far as the Battle of Fredericksburg goes, and the Irish Brigade in particular?
When was that movie released, Matt?
30 years ago? I don't.
That's the last time I saw that movie.
Okay.
With the exception of the opening scene, which I think is probably one of the best opening scenes in any movie, with the flags.
The flags and the music.
Yeah.
And the music.
It's very good.
Yes, and the music. So I haven't seen the new Bob Dylan movie. Did they include that song?
That song? I don't know. I doubt it, because I think it's young Bob Dylan that movie's about. Yeah.
But we did cover Gettysburg with regards to the Irish fighting Irish.
Yeah.
Cobb's Legion, 24th Georgia.
Oh, at Fredericksburg. Yep. Yeah. So that is accurate there. And but they kind of get it at Fredericksburg, don't they?
It's a tough battle for them.
Which which what number are they in the order? Because it's 14 various assaults on Maurice Heights.
Oh no,
I don't know if I documented that. I mean, it's multiple.
I'm going to Mike. Do you remember? I think it's 14.
Can you?
They had 45. They had 45% casualties. They went in with 1,200. They had 545 casualties.
Jeez.
Quote: They were slaughtered like sheep.
Yeah.
Quote: It's a sad Christmas by many Irish hearthstones, as the Irish newspaper reported in New York City.
That's a big chunk taken out right there.
Earlier with the Antietam casualties, in case you needed those.
What are those?
I had them. It was for the whole brigade was 540.
So between September and New Year's Day, they lost 1,000 men.
Yes.
Jesus.
And there was a solemn requiem mass in New York City at St. Patrick's Cathedral, and Corby officiated at that mass.
Well, that's devastating in that short amount of time. Not just for the brigade, but the people at home, and just what a mess.
Yes.
Okay, so all right, Fredericksburg. Now during the winter, what? Go ahead.
Just a human interest story.
Go ahead.
And make two of them that may help describe some of this that you mentioned. There's a guy named Private William McCarter, 116th Pennsylvania. He has a wonderful description of Hancock in his book, My Life with the Irish Brigade. So you had asked, somebody had asked about different books about the Irish Brigade. This is a pretty good book on it. He describes General Hancock's cursing, and I love this description. Hancock reached the highest degree of cursing and oath of unpardonable nature, using words that are not repeatable. This kind of thing, So
sure, which are probably really tame today.
Probably, but back then, Hancock right off the bat is known for his swearing. During these fights. Now, in McCarter's post-war memoir, My Life with the Irish Brigade, he goes into extensive detail about that battle and the horror of being left on the field surrounded by dead and dying men. As he described it, death, havoc, and carnage was visible at every step on the ground fronting Maurice Heights. So, not sure where they were in the line, but it wasn't good. Now, he is wounded in the shoulder and in the side. And they take him, and one of the surgeons, the surgeon that will end up operating on him is Surgeon Abner Hard of the 8th Illinois. We see accounts from him here at Gettysburg, 8th Illinois surgeon. There's a bullet that can't be located by some of the surgeons. Abner Hard takes a shot at it. He finds the bullet, cuts it out, and he hands it to McCandless. McCandless notes, I put it in my pocket, but somewhere along the way I lost it. Now, an officer of the 63rd New York on the field, he's going to pull McCarter's blanket off of him, and he said it was very heavy, and they unroll it, and come to find out it was full of 47 shots, 47 bullets.
Ooh, wow.
The officer asked him, is that where the Irish Brigade keeps their bullets? And McCarter says, no, we have a much more convenient place and get rid of it as soon as possible. So that blanket was rolled up and it was in front of him as protection, going against the wall. And so imagine, there's 47 shots that could have hit him.
Oh, my God. I can't imagine that at all.
Yeah.
The other thing I can't imagine that I read about Fredericksburg was after the first few assaults, the remaining brigades as they went up were having a hard time not slipping in the mud that all the blood created, which you can't fathom that. What a mess. What a mess. Go ahead.
Okay.
By the way, we have someone in Ireland listening to us right now.
Oh, do we?
Yes. So,
welcome.
Hola. How do they say hello in Ireland?
You say top of the morning.
Oh, top of the morning.
You've been practicing your Gaelic, I see, Matt.
Or top of the afternoon.
Yeah. Oh, God. Okay. Go ahead.
So, one of the other things that I wanted to bring up, and I don't know if your intent is to have this somewhere around St. Patrick's Day, but St. Patrick's Day celebrations by this brigade are stories
Pretty
of
wild.
legend.
We did an episode on St. Patrick's Day in the Civil War. Matt Borders was the guest, and he talked about some of that. But go ahead, remind us of those.
So, you know, the in 1862, St. Patrick's Day falls when they're on a march near Fairfax Courthouse. So they'll have a celebration there. In 1863, they're near Falmouth. In 64, it's all part of the winter encampment near Brandy Station, which I know you have visited with me.
Yep.
Down there to the Brandy Station area. And in 1865, it's in Petersburg. But it's the 1863 one in Falmouth, I think, that gets the most press, if you will. It seems to be a very large event attended by 10,000 people, including lots of important generals. And you know, we don't have to go deep into it, but since you've done an episode on it, but there's a grandstand that's made. There's a hurdle race,
steeplechase.
There's a steeplechase to
like in the Quiet Man.
Yep. There's jumping the ditch. That's a good one. My favorite is the mule race, which the intent of the mule race is to come in last, which probably is not all that hard because mules are pretty stubborn. You know.
Right.
When it comes to actually,
it's a comical race to watch.
I would imagine.
Yeah.
Sure. So this is written not only by men of the Second Corps, but it's written about by accounts that you see like in the Sixth Corps and Fifth Corps as well. So very, very widely visited. There's a greased pole, climb the greased pole. And I've seen two accounts on this. One that there was $20 at the top of the greased pole. One that was $50. The winner apparently put sand in his trousers to help him get up the pole. So, there's all these different activities, and each of the men, it was said, was given 2 drams of whiskey. Okay. So that may have helped add to the gaiety of the day.
Inspire, motivate them.
Yeah. So imagine, having your 2 drams and getting on a mule.
Did you come across the drink, the favorite drink that was there?
I did, and there were 2 captains, I think, that made the punch. And
3 parts Irish whiskey and 1 part champagne.
Okay. All right. So there's 2 captains that are designated to put this together. And apparently, as they're putting it together in the testing, as the writer depicted, they were overwhelmed by the duties of their responsibilities. But not so bad that one of them next day partakes in the steeplechase. I forget. Captain Gosson. He's actually riding General Marr's horse, a horse by the name of Jack Hinton.
Jack Hinton. I like that.
Yeah. So this is a big deal. There's Edwin Forbes. I love Civil War sketch artists because, they put these sketches together almost like real time. Yeah. Just the amount of detail that you find them is fascinating.
I always wonder how they do that.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's an artist named Dave Geister. So Dave was the artist in residency here at Gettysburg 1 year. And I got to know Dave a little bit, and I asked him about that one time, and he said, "Here, it's easy." And he put this sketch together in like 3 minutes,
really,
of just that had probably, I don't know, I'm going to say 80% of the scene,
right?
And he said then they would go back and fill in the detail, so they kind of get the gist of the scene,
sure,
and then fill in the detail later is how they did it, but amazingly fast.
Right, I can't even do the gist of the scene.
I couldn't do it with stick figures.
No, I can't either. I'm not good at drawing at all.
Yeah. So
Dave's pretty cool, though. I had him on the show a couple of times.
Oh, did you? Yeah.
Well, he was on the show, and then when Little Round Top opened up, since he did the Wayside artwork, he was there, and I saw him and talked to him for a bit. And he's a really cool guy and a really good artist.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I forgot that now you can see his work if you visit Little Round Top. It's on those wayside panels.
Yeah, those. Is the original painting in the visitor center, or does he have that? I forgot to ask where that's going to go.
I'm not sure on that one.
I want that.
Yeah. He has a really cool painting of Lincoln too. It's one of my favorites.
Yeah, I haven't seen
on
that.
his website.
I'll have to check it out.
You can find it. Yeah. But
all right.
we're not here to talk about.
No, we're not talking about art today.
Yeah.
We're talking
Today
about
we're talking Irish Brigade.
Irish Brigade. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So Fredericksburg's done. Now there's the winter. We got St. Patrick's Day. Anything notable? Because Hooker takes over. He reorganizes the army. Anything that affects the Irish Brigade there? Good, bad, indifferent? Anyway, no. Okay. So moving on then to Chancellorsville. The Ville of Chancellor.
So they'll have some involvement during that fight at Banks Ford and U.S. Ford. I think the biggest notable action there is they're going to have to get involved in rescuing the 5th Maine Battery.
Okay.
And it's here that
Mulholland.
Yeah, St. Clair Mulholland will receive the Medal of Honor for his actions in helping out retrieving, getting that battery off the field. Okay. That's probably their most notable action, I would say, John. Unless you
and he's a major at this time, right?
Actually, I think he was a lieutenant colonel at that time.
And he's bumped down to major by the time he gets to Gettysburg. And
Interesting.
If you've been in the service, that's a kick in the teeth.
Sure.
And it wasn't,
why did they bump him down?
Not because of performance, because they were so small.
Not enough men.
So few.
Not enough men. So.
Not enough men for...
And you can't recruit more.
Bingo, you got the picture. Yeah, there you go. And they still fight.
Yeah, well, sure.
And it seems like Mulholland was gracious about that.
Yes.
Nobody would probably like that. But,
while you're talking about him, and we have somebody from Ireland, he was born in County Antrim, as well as the Macmillan of the 24th Georgia. Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't mean to whack you in the face with
1839. He's the only one who wrote a book. Is the only regiment that has a book written about it. It's the story of the 116th Regiment, and that's Mulholland. The other 4 regiments do not have books per se about them, so he wrote that book. By the time he was done the Civil War, he was wounded 4 times.
Jeez.
He was made brevet brigadier general at the Wilderness, May 5, 1864. Brevet brigadier general, and then he is a brevet major general when he stormed one of the forts at Petersburg, October 27th, 1864. He lives a full life. He becomes chief of police of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and he becomes the pension agent through 3 presidential administrations, and he works tirelessly to get soldiers their pensions for the rest of his life. And he is a major factor in getting the Father Corby statue placed on the field October 10th, 1910.
Okay. All right. Now, Chancellorsville's over. Do we know their strength at the beginning and what they lost at Chancellorsville? If not, Mike can look it up in the back, I'm sure.
I don't have it.
All right. I don't have my Jeopardy music as we look forward here.
I do know this. It's anecdotal, but important. That's after that is when Meagher quits.
Why?
Because the Irish Brigade no longer exists, quote unquote, of him. His resignation has existed. I bid you an affectionate farewell.
So, but it does exist, but to him it doesn't.
He's upset because they're down so small, and he can't recruit back. We've always been able to recruit back. Now he's got Stanton and Lincoln not even responding to him. So he did what I think he shouldn't have done. He let his Irish temper get the best of him. He said, I quit. Yeah.
Back to Fredericksburg, I seem to remember that he gave a rousing speech before they went in and said something like, when the danger is high, I'll be there with you, or something to that effect, and then didn't go because his knee hurt. Is that right? Did you ever hear that? Or was I
heard something about the knee, but I didn't hear that he didn't go. He might have been behind, but I didn't hear that he didn't move forward.
I thought that he had stayed back, citing his knee as a problem to move forward. Right. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I don't know. It's not important because this isn't addressing Fredericksburg.
But one thing is, isn't it the Battle of Fredericksburg where they get the sprigs to put in their hats?
Very good, because they didn't have the flags.
They didn't have the flags.
And so to identify each other, they put it, the boxwood sprig of green is the way they
describe it.
They put that in.
Okay. Yeah. So they didn't have the flags at Fredericksburg.
And they don't have the corps badges on their hats, on
Yet.
the kepis yet.
Right, because Hooker's not there yet as the commander. Yeah. Okay. So now we're on the road to Gettysburg.
Yes.
Good for us.
Thank you.
Finally made to Gettysburg. Okay, so Meagher resigns. Command is given to Colonel Patrick Kelly. He is born in 1821 in Castle Hackett County, Galloway,
Yes.
Ireland. Appointed lieutenant colonel on October 1662, colonel of the 88th New York.
He was a tenant farmer when he immigrated to this country, and he enlisted as an enlisted man and moved his way up.
Nice. His favorite horse was Fallabala, which, as you know, is Gaelic for clear the way.
Right.
It was the motto of the 28th Massachusetts. Today, it's the motto of the 69th New York Army National Guard Unit. It's also on the monument for the 28th Mass. When I bring people through that area of the Wheatfield and we come around the curve, around Stony Hill, I always stop and point that out. Because it tells a lot of the story, I think. So in September of 63, General Meagher writes a letter to President Lincoln recommending Colonel Kelly be promoted to Brigadier General in command of the brigade. There is no response from the president for that promotion. So they're on their way to Gettysburg. So
Now, they're in the Second Corps here at Gettysburg. Were they always in the Second Corps, or did they move around throughout their career?
I think from Antietam on, they're part of Hancock's division.
And technically speaking, when they went back after Bull Run or Manassas, they were still the 69th New York State Militia, and they re-enlisted, become the 69th New York Volunteer Infantry in the Army of the Potomac.
Okay. Did that just work out that way where they got to keep the number, or was that like...
Knowing those guys, they got to keep the number.
They got to keep the number, yeah.
Somewhere in the 1950s, they were assigned Nike missiles, and they said, hey, we're infantry. And that was the end of that. And in World War I, they were part of the Rainbow Museum, Rainbow Division.
Okay.
And the Army thought it'd be really cool if when we call up all the reserves, we give them 100 something. So they happened to be the 165th New York in World War I, and they came back and they said, get rid of that. We want to go back to be 69. So twice they changed things.
Wow.
And I'm stealing my own thunder, but speaking about flags, to this day in the United States Army, there is only one flag, regimental, that is green, per a written exception to Army regulations, and it's the 69th New York Army National Guard, 25th and Lexington Avenue.
Huh.
They are allowed to have that exception in honor of their heritage.
That's pretty cool.
It's very cool.
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty cool that the government let them do it too.
Yes.
And I guess that's the coolest part.
They are the honor guard for the Marshal of the St. Patrick's Day Parade every year.
Yeah. Really rich Irish history in New York.
Well, we went up, a bunch of us 2 or 3 years ago I knew the lieutenant colonel commander because he had been the TAC officer of my son when he joined the New York Army National Guard, and he gave us a tour, and he showed us the flag. He carries a rosary, whether he's Catholic or not, because St. Vincent Van Gogh, is that the guy who wrote what can be so lovely as a tree?
Oh yeah,
he was in the World War I, 69th New York, and everybody wants a seat at the Requiem Mass that they do. So the 69th New York today will just halt. Okay, you're not dismissed, but take a break. And if you don't want to go to church, you don't have to. And he said, don't worry about it. Everybody wants a seat there, including Senator Schumer. And so they have a Mass, and then they continue their parade. And when we went up there, they're about 15% Caucasian, and the rest are soldiers of African heritage and Hispanic heritage. And my comment, that's not a problem for the Irish. That's what this country is about.
Right.
There's no problem with them. They have the history, but if there are other heritages are joining and signing up, and these guys served and lost men in Iraq and Afghanistan. They were called up.
Yeah.
One of the most moving stories I've ever heard John tell was of a young man from Latin America who was part of the 69th and also a volunteer fireman. And last seen running into building number 2, as I recall, John.
Yes, he was in the 60s. He was full-time firefighter.
Yep.
And he was a first lieutenant studying to be captain. And he was his ladder 9 from Brooklyn was called up, and he died. He literally died serving his community, his state, and his country.
Yeah.
So and his name is etched. If you've gone there and seen the waterfall, all the names of the first responders. I'm trying to remember his name. I had it. I'll remember it. I'll wake up in the middle of the night remembering it. He's partially Spanish and partially French heritage.
Yeah.
Immigrated to this country.
Yep. Mom and dad immigrated.
Mom and dad, and he turned to his parents when the airplane took off, and he said, "Now we're in America." And he loses his life on 9/11.
So tying it back to the sacrifice of all the way back to the Irish Brigade.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. The immigrants fighting their asses off over here for this country. All right. So let's get to Gettysburg now.
Should we go to Gettysburg?
Yeah,
Why
let's
don't we
do
go
it.
to Gettysburg?
Yeah. Okay.
Some of us have to eat dinner before the night is through.
Yes. So June 29th, they will march 32 miles to Uniontown, Maryland. 30th is payday. Always good. They get a little bit of a rest on payday. They get paid. July 1st, they're going to march to Taneytown. And since the battle is going on, they will end up marching, continuing on through Taneytown all the way up to the area near Big Round Top. So they will get here late on July 1st. They are part of John C. Caldwell's division, so 2nd Corps, 1st Division. The 2nd Brigade of that, and it.
I wouldn't interrupt you, but I like that. It's easy to remember. 212, either way you do it.
Oh, there you go.
Bottom to bottom to top.
Yeah.
212.
212.
Is that also an area code in New York?
That's the area code for Manhattan.
Manhattan.
Yeah.
There you go.
No, they made that happen too. No. No.
Very influential. 4 o'clock in the morning, July 2nd, they're going to get woken up. They're going to go to the area of the Hummelbaugh Farm. And then, that area kind of just west of where the PA monument is.
Yeah. Okay.
There's as July 2nd unfolds, our friend Dan Sickles will move forward. Hancock is said to have, been tapped on the shoulder by a captain, probably Captain Obvious, and says, "Hey, look at where Sickles is going."
Captain Obvious.
Yeah, I think it was Captain Obvious was the captain.
Was he a brevet captain?
Yes. Little known about most of his actions, but this one was pretty famous.
That's funny.
But Hancock will say yes, and soon you'll see them come tumbling back.
Yeah.
So kind of predicting that, it's just not a good position to try to hold. So they're actually sent down towards the Wheatfield. As they're going down into that area, it's observed that the 5th Corps is then coming in, so they'll be held. They're not going to go all the way down to the Wheatfield at this point in time until about 5 o'clock when they're told to get into position. And it's around this time that Father William Corby is going to request and receive permission from Colonel Kelly to address the men. He will put on his purple stole around his neck, climb on a rock. Now, we argue about which rock. The one that it's on is the actual one, but, since that's where it's located, it is the actual one as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
But he will, explain the general absolution, urge the men to go to silently confess their sins, do their duty, and to remember the seriousness of the trust placed in them as soldiers. He then says the Latin words of absolution as he blesses them with the sign of the cross. Now, later on, when Father Corby writes his memoir, he writes that general absolution was meant for all, not just for our brigade, but for all North and South who were susceptible of it, and all who were to appear before their judge. And so
That was kind of him.
He's actually praying for both sides.
Yeah. Which, as you should do
Yeah.
if you're a good Christian.
Yeah.
Now, all the Irish in the Irish Brigade are not Catholic, correct?
Correct.
You got to mix.
Correct.
But at this point, nobody cares.
Correct.
They'll take what they can get.
If I could add a personal interest story there.
Yeah.
And this is the truth, so don't get mad at me.
Okay.
When Colonel Kelly asks permission, Hancock says yes. And there's no question that they stay there. They're not going to move off for this. And he rides up and sees this happening. Well, in 145th Pennsylvania, I believe, is in Brooks Brigade, still part of Caldwell's division, which is there in the same area. There's a Methodist minister named Stuckenberg. I think it's von Stuckenberg. And he says, can we have a moment? And, of course, you're so when Father Corby, later in life, writes his memories called Memoirs of Chaplain Life, von Stuckenberg writes his. I'm surrounded by Methodists. The man is a Lutheran. The man said it. That's what it is. I think they have the original in the Gettysburg College Library. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, right.
But it was also a very profound, serious moment. When soldiers are about to march into combat, they know what's going to happen. And these two groups have spiritual guidance for some of them, the last moments of their lives.
I just can't imagine doing it. Like the bravery that it takes to be able to do that, knowing what you're going into, especially a unit like the Irish Brigade that's down to 532 men.
Yes.
And geez, you've got to have this feeling of sudden, or not sudden, but certain doom when you go into a battle. I mean, anybody, but especially them. I mean, Jesus.
Yeah. So, as most people that have read about the Irish Brigade know, Father Corby goes on to become president of Notre Dame.
Yeah.
A couple of times. He actually has a student named Paul Wood. Paul Wood will paint a painting of this event. And in that, he will include General Hancock on his horse with his staff around him. And Paul Wood actually paints himself into the painting, just like Philip Petaux, right?
Right. As one does.
As one does. I wonder if Dave painted himself into the painting of Little Round Top. I'll have to
I should have asked him that. I would have if I were him. Yeah.
So,
I would have put me in a prominent position too.
Right.
Like a lieutenant colonel.
Yeah. Or maybe like on the rock next to
Chamberlain or yeah. Him.
Yeah, I wanted to see if you're going to answer.
That guy.
Yeah. So.
It's escaping me.
This wasn't on the test?
This was
Gerard Baptiste.
Him.
Excuse me, Gerard Baptiste is the immigrant firefighter, a part-time soldier with the 69th New York who loses his life, Ladder 9, Brooklyn, Tower number 2.
Thank you.
Gerard Baptiste. And his name, I went there, I took a picture. His name is in all the names of the first responders if you go to Ground Zero and see the waterfalls and everything. Yeah, Gerard Baptiste.
I went there in December of 2001 when it was just still a mess and they were still removing stuff. And I haven't gone back since they fixed it up and, put the memorial in and everything like that. But that was, you had to be there. You see it on TV, but you really can't grasp it until you go there. And I remember they had cleared a lot of the dust off the roads, but the only place they didn't clear it was where the wall of the building met the sidewalk in that right angle there. And it was just a line of dust up and down all the roads for a couple blocks. And that to me was like, oh my God, then you really kind of, and then there were buildings that were still standing that had very visible damage to them. And they would write, I don't know if I assumed that this was a rescue effort thing, but the buildings that had, they had, plywood over the windows and stuff like that, and they would spray paint cleared on it. And so I assumed that meant that they had gone and checked the building and cleared it, and that's when
it becomes very real, when you go and you actually see it.
Yeah.
All right. So Gettysburg, now they head on down yonder ways to help old Dan out.
So now we'll give you multiple choice here. Perhaps John has an opinion, but
Mike, you're included in this multiple choice. As well.
I like multiple choice.
All right.
The way that they head down towards the Wheatfield is either by the Wykert Farm lanes,
Okay.
or down towards the area of Sedgwick Avenue. And as they're going down, there's Cross, Kelly, Zook, and Brook, right?
Yes.
Zook is pulled out by 3rd Corps Staff Officer Henry Tremaine.
Okay.
So they're going down there, and they're one of their commands is not with them. They are given the command to go in by the left flank. I'm not a reenactor, so I can't really describe all of those. Maybe perhaps John can. But
Mike can. Mike's a reenactor. What does that mean, Mike, when you go in by the left flank?
Yeah, that's probably the easiest. So if they're in a column marching, by the left flank is essentially going right into battle line, going to their left. So it's the easiest formation for them to go right into battle.
Got it.
the problem is they go in inverted, which means flags are behind, not out front. File closers are out front, not behind. Taller guys are in the front. They should be in the back. So it's a messed up formation as they go in. They will take the time to switch the flags and the file closers.
Okay.
But, think about this. Okay, you got a smooth bore. Okay, and, they will fix bayonets.
Right.
And go into battle like that. So shorter guys in the back. So, either going around the guy in front of you or lifting your rifle up.
Right.
It's not an effective way. Not to mention, they had been drilled and had fought with shorter guys in front, able to load their rifles with plenty of room. Now you got this big tall guy in front of you who's probably, getting hit by your bayonet and your ramrod and all this. So it's very problematic.
Yeah. Okay.
So both of them are right. Mike is right by left flank is the quickest way to get. But when they got there and cross Plum Run and they're ready front, they turn and their backs are to the enemy.
Oh.
So they flipped the file closers. They flipped the colors, but the soldiers, they said, we got to go into fight, so they just said about face.
Okay.
And then they go in exactly as he said.
Okay.
So that was showing a little initiative in trying circumstances.
Now they go in and they traverse the Wheatfield, but they're going up Stony Hill. Is that right?
Yeah, traverse, in my opinion, diagonally from the northeast to the southwest.
Yeah.
Go across.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And of course,
now at this point, though, there's no opposition that they're aware of.
Oh no!
Right? I mean, they're not firing at anybody. Nobody's firing at them as they're going across the Wheatfield before they get to Stony Hill.
As they're going across, correct?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
But then
they're soon going to run into Kershaw. At this time, the 5th Corps is starting to fall back. Tilton and Schweitzer are falling back. They're going in, and we probably don't have the time, and I don't have the ability to rattle off all of the various actions of the
back and forth of everything.
The Irish Brigade is essentially going to take on the 7th and 3rd South Carolina, primarily some part of the 2nd South Carolina. So they're going across the Wheatfield. To their left is Cross's Brigade. To the right is Zook's Brigade coming in, and Brooke is more or less in reserve. On the right flank, you have the flags of the 116th Pennsylvania, which we've talked about. Then the 28th Massachusetts, and then the 69th, 88th, and 63rd. So I think we've covered the flag discussion on that pretty well. But they will take on Kershaw.
Now, wait, Kershaw. How many? Now they're not taking on his entire brigade, but they're like 2 regiments, right?
Correct.
But still, how big is his entire brigade?
You've got the numbers there, Matt.
From their point of view, a big mistake was made. They're crossing the Emmitsburg Road. They're near the Rose Farm. and somebody wants them to. It was the 15th South Carolina and 2 and 3, and they misinterpret a command and they wheel left.
Some of them do.
Some of them wheel left, and then they will say, we could hear the canister clacking off the stone barn as it whipped through our legs of the Rose Farm house.
God.
And so he initially, that's good for the Irish Brigade because not everybody in Kershaw's regiment is coming at them.
Right.
Because
okay.
they misinterpreted one of their own orders. And that happens in combat.
Sure. But my point is, though, with the size here, again, we're talking about 532 men, right? Versus, and I'll get the number for Kershaw's brigade here, but I'll do it while you're talking. Versus probably more than that. Right? I mean, even if it's a portion of Kershaw's brigade, that's still going to outnumber you.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So continue, and I'll find that out.
I mean, I think most of Kershaw's regiments are pretty good size. It seems to me there was one that was a smaller regiment, but it's primarily the 7th South Carolina and 3rd, and as John said, they're kind of pointing a little bit different way.
But they'll recover from that. And
yes.
Yep.
And and as I mentioned, the order had been given to fix the bayonets, which is great for the first shot. You don't have to worry about it because you've put your bayonet on after you've loaded your gun.
Right.
But after that, I would assume that many of the experienced men are using their ramrod with one finger, to avoid slicing off a finger or something with the bayonet.
So Kershaw has 2,183 men. So
does it say what the 7th and the 2nd were?
No. Well, let me see. I'll find if that's in them.
Well, one thing, Matt.
Go ahead, Mikey.
If I might, I think sometimes when we look at map books and look at numbers, it kind of, we're imagining, all right, it was this group versus this group, when in the actual battle, these lines are massive. Brigades are anchored on brigades. So it's not necessarily as simple.
But I'm just trying to get the picture in people's heads that a portion of 2,100 men is still going to probably, because there's other units that they're facing there. The Irish Brigade is facing, right?
That's what I was waiting until you gave me an entree on that.
Okay, go ahead.
I think it's good to pick these numbers. It's the first numbers.
Yeah.
Whatever they were, the Irish Brigade pushes them off the hill, and Kershaw goes back to the Rose Farm, and he does two things. He reorganizes his brigade, and he sends back to Semmes.
Right.
And Semmes moves forward and falls mortally wounded. Okay, so by the time he comes forward, Kershaw reattacks. Anderson is now coming from his 3rd attempt at the southern edge of the Wheatfield, and then Wofford comes down. And so at the end of this fight, the Irish Brigade is getting hit by 4 brigades of Confederates who are outflanking them on both sides.
It's amazing anybody survived it.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, and matter of fact, either the color guard or something tries to say, General Caldwell, those are Confederates. He said, no, they're not. There are reinforcements. And then, oh my God, that's Wofford coming down unopposed.
Right.
By that time, Wofford's unopposed.
Yeah.
And one of the more experienced enlisted, and I always make a point of respecting your enlisted, says, when a unit folds up like a jackknife, they're retreating.
Yeah.
And everybody in the Wheatfield is retreating.
And Wofford includes the former Cobb's Legion, right? There's Irish.
24th.
There they are again.
Yes, that's right. McMillan is there with the 24th Georgia. Thank you. That's exactly correct.
And that same man was crying when he saw the Irish Brigade.
A second time.
Maybe with their flags.
He was a crier.
Very emotional guy.
He's also crying because he didn't get in the movie for that
one. Okay, so, but that's not the end of the Battle of Gettysburg. No. That's not the end of their fight.
Yes, it is.
It is. Yeah.
So, on the 3rd, aren't they?
They're moved back to their original position. They do build up breastworks.
Yeah, but they don't really get into it.
No, they're where they were supposed to be.
Right. Yeah. And I guess who would they have been against in the Pickett's charge part of the fighting? Then were they further down?
Yeah, they might have taken
like Wilcox. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So not the heaviest part.
No, that's unequivocally correct.
They lucked out.
So 27 men killed.
Okay.
109 wounded, 62 captured or missing. So out of the 532, almost 200, just under 200 are casualties.
Something like 37 or 38% casualties.
Yeah.
Out of 532 guys.
So what happens to them
Well, they keep
after
going.
the Battle of Gettysburg? I mean, what's left?
Yeah. Yeah. So they keep going. They will get a couple of commanders, one of whom you've heard of, Thomas Smith or Smythe, however you want to pronounce it. They do get some new recruits for the Wilderness. So they're bolstered up. They're commanded by Smith there. And there's a, going forward to the Battle of Spotsylvania, they'll be part of Hancock's attack on the Muleshoe. Colonel Richard Bynes, will be leading the 28th Massachusetts. Now, I have a note here that he returns to that regiment with a new green flag. So, I must have pulled that out of one of the regimental, something written about the regiment. I can't remember if that's Mulholland or not. One of the human interest stories that I love, 116th Pennsylvania, Private Robert Glendenning. He makes a note that a private in his line is hit by artillery fire, and they think, oh my God, this guy's head's going to be blown off. Well, turns out it was his toupee that they saw going across the field. So he had a very, very close shave.
Wow. That is a close shave.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he was fine. It took his toupee off.
Yeah. Yeah. But when
That's
they saw
lucky.
that, they thought, oh my God, he's a goner. And
Yeah. Well, yeah.
yeah. So.
And is that, I guess I'm taking it that's when they discovered he had a toupee?
Apparently.
Wow.
Yeah. I've
Good for
I've
him
seen one
for
or two other
hiding it.
stories like that they were pretty good at hiding toupees.
Maybe they made toupees better back then.
Maybe they did.
Ask Gideon Wells.
What's that?
Ask Gideon Wells, the Secretary of the Navy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So they'll go through the Wilderness in Spotsylvania, go through Cold Harbor, where Colonel Burns is mortally wounded. They'll go into Petersburg. Colonel Patrick Kelly is killed there.
June 16th, 1864.
It's my birthday.
Is it?
Yeah.
Well, raise one to Patrick Kelly this year on your birthday.
You could do it for me too, but I guess he earned it.
So by June of 64, there'll be a consolidation of the 63rd, 69th, and 88th into 6 other New York regiments. The 28th Mass and 116 are moved out.
I mean, they you might have said this, I missed it. They never get their ranks replenished.
They are replenished some going into the Wilderness.
Oh, okay.
Apparently.
Okay, some, but not.
They're never back.
They're never back to
Never
the
back.
close to full strength or.
Never have a general commanding them.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. All right. Well, that's the story of the Irish Brigade, but it doesn't end there because our patrons have questions that they sent in. Because you know what? When you're a patron, you get to know ahead of time what we're doing, and you get to send questions in for these Ask a Gettysburg Guide episodes. And so guess what? We're going to get to them, but we have to take a break first, and we will be right back after these words with our questions from our patrons at patreon.com/addressinggettysburg. Thank y'all.
Love big man music. All right, maybe this binder isn't a good idea. It's a little hard to maneuver with this binder. Did you know Bethany, Cindy, Jason in the back, Colby, Debbie, 6 questions, Lentz. Did you guys know that there are almost 300 audio shows and almost 100 video shows on our Patreon page? Did you know that? No, you didn't. You didn't know that. You've never heard that before. Did you know that several respectable licensed battlefield guides are patrons, but have asked to remain anonymous so as not to ruin their reputations? You didn't know that either. Patreon now allows a 7-day free trial. So if you're not sure that you want to join and help keep this show going, you can do a 7-day free trial, and it's at the 2nd lieutenant level, which means you get all of the audio episodes, all audio versions of everything released
in a month you get. That's 4 episodes in a month that you can listen to all 4. Well, it's a 7-day trial, but you can go and listen to whatever. A lot of people like to go back and just look at all the titles of the shows and randomly hit play at whatever piques their interest. You can do whatever the hell you want to do in those 7 days. And then, of course, you're going to say, you know what? I'm joining. You could also join as a free follower, and we do some free posts every now and then, so you can see all that stuff. It is, of course, cheaper to join as a monthly member. It's even cheaper to join as an annual member.
Oh, my God.
Sorry, I misread that. I spelled it wrong. And did you know that 908 out of 909 college sophomores agree that you can't say you're fully prepared for the guide exam without having consumed all of AG's Patreon content? Guys, they're college sophomores, okay? Watch the news. They know everything. They'll tell you, believe me. Trust the science of that poll and trust the college sophomores. You've only lived decades more than they have, so what could you possibly know? You know what I mean? Go to patreon.com/addressing Gettysburg and join us today, and you will not be sorry you did. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Hi, I'm Matt from the wildly popular history podcast Addressing Gettysburg, and I encourage you to stop into Bantam Roasters and get a bag of Little Ground Top. Not only is it an awesome name for a coffee in Gettysburg, but it is actually an awesome coffee, and you're going to love it. 120,000 people, let me repeat that, 120,000 people so far have not ordered or purchased a bag of Bantam Roasters Little Ground Top yet, but that doesn't mean they won't someday. So why don't you help us get closer to that number and go into Bantam, or you can go to addressinggettysburg.com/cafe and get your bag now. Enjoy. Okay, so we're getting to our questions now, and here we go. Our first one is from Rob Frey. He says, who designs the Irish Brigade monument, and did members of the brigade have a hand in its design? Did the dog on the monument take part in the battle?
Last part, easiest to know. The dog is an Irish wolfhound, and he's part of the theme, which is faith and loyalty, and he's a loyal Irish wolfhound waiting for the men who will never come out of those woods again. No. There was no dog with the Irish Brigade here. Generally speaking, all the regiments had a hand in designing their monument. They received money from the state, and they designed their monument. They didn't know it. The sculptor is O'Donovan, and he was part of Hillary Jones' artillery brigade that fought against the Union Army, mostly on day one. And so you had a Confederate Irish veteran sculpt that monument for the Irish Brigade in the Wheatfield.
Wow. I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yeah.
Speaking of the monument, Mike, would you do me a favor, go to the bookshelf in the hallway and grab the mini of the monument so we can show the audience? And
it's the only one on the field. Usually each regiment has its own, but it's the only one on the field that has 3 regiments.
Right, and that's because they fought together because they were so small. Is that the idea?
Well, the 3 New York. That's beautiful. The 3 New York regiments.
So here we are. This is from Gary Castile over on Baltimore Street, across from the Tour Center. He does miniatures of the monuments. This is the Irish Brigade, and this here down here is the dog.
And so we don't need my picture, do we?
No. Yours is nice, but
can you tell me if you can read the back part, or is it just?
Yes, I can.
Something about they're telling you why they fought.
The brigade entered the battle under Commander Colonel Patrick Kelly, 530 strong, of which this contingent composing 3 battalions of 2 companies each, numbered 240 men. The original strength of these battalions, oh my God, this is tiny. Hold on a second.
I tried to go by it today, and it's still closed.
Oh yeah. All right. Of these battalions was 3,000 men.
And that's just the 3 New York ones.
That's just the 3, right. The brigade participated with great credit to itself and the rage. Oh, the race it represented in every battle of the Army of the Potomac, in which the Second Corps was engaged from Fair Oaks, June 1st, 1862, to Appomattox Courthouse, April 9th, 1865.
Thank you. That's a good job. That they are just trying to leave you a message. We are Americans. We fought for this country, and etc.
Yeah.
So,
and it's a beautiful. It's one of my favorite monuments. It probably is my favorite monument, but it's beautiful. And you can see on the cross there, you've got the numbers of the regiments.
The 3 New York regiments.
Yeah.
And so they're asking about. I know some other things about it. Shall I?
Go ahead. Yeah.
So my understanding is St. Patrick, when he was trying to convert the pagans, the Druids, he knew they worshipped the sun.
Yes.
So he put the sun on the Christian cross. That's what's unique about a Celtic cross.
Oh, I always wondered what that was.
That's the legend of why it's there.
Okay.
This green is green malachite. That's a type of gem, and this is and they have. And I tell people on tours, probably the same as you, I say, I would love to tell you that that's a shamrock, but it's the trefoil, which is a symbol of the Second Corps.
Right, right.
And there are many other soldiers who are not Irish in the Second Corps, so that is not a shamrock. Yeah. And then we come down further, and we have the seal of the great state of New York. We have the sunburst, which is representing Ireland. And then you have the harp, which is representing Ireland. And then those are 2 American eagles. And then we already talked about the wolfhound.
What is the it looks like a bas relief on the side here.
Oh, that's an excellent question.
Thank you.
Thank you for asking that.
You're welcome.
Rorty's battery. Okay. James McKay Rorty was with them in line where Caldwell's division was when they were posted mid-morning, July 2nd, 1863, in the area just south and slightly west of today's Pennsylvania Memorial.
Okay.
They were posted there, and I'm flipping because this is one of the things that bothers me a lot. Winslow's battery is with the 3rd Corps Brigade in the Wheatfield, and when the Irish get there, he's withdrawing because he's out of ammunition. Nobody gave an order for Rorty to go with them. A brigade is replacing a brigade.
Okay.
But they didn't, their artillery didn't go with them. So you're asking whether they're getting shot at all. That they had no artillery supporting them. And they were sent in piecemeal. Cross goes first. Kelly second or third, depending on how you want to look at it, because when Tremaine came off and took Zook, the unit was then deranged. The commander didn't know that the whole brigade has been taken away. And all of a sudden, when Kelly goes in, Cross is being shot up because he was by himself. He's going in piecemeal, and then all of a sudden, Zook is going through the woods. He may have gone first, but the woods are slowing him down, and he'll be killed. And then Brooke is behind, waiting to be told where to go. This is me, but at one point in time, Caldwell's just going around. Who am I supporting? Where's Sykes? I'm supposed to be helping. If he just sat on his horse, and for you could say a second, a minute, 10 minutes, at some point, Cross is there, Kelly's coming, and Zook is there. You have a line with a reserve brigade. If he had just taken charge and had them all advance at once and place Brooke where he needed them, we shouldn't get into what ifs, but that never happened.
Right.
I'm just saying at some point in time, they were physically together.
Okay.
So one thing I'd like to finish up with on the monument, which is dedicated July 2nd, 1888.
25th anniversary.
Yep. Father Corby will write in his memoir, imagine one who ought to be a grim old warrior standing before his companions in arms, addressing them after a separation that dated to March 20, 1865, nearly a quarter of a century. At first I got on reasonably well, until looking over those assembled, the surviving members of our illustrious and numerous band as it appeared at Alexandria, Virginia in the fall of '61. I happened to make this statement. Here is what is left of us. Where are the others?
Yes.
When I filled up very unexpectedly and could not speak for several minutes, I had struck a very tender chord. The celebrant, although 11 years older than I, wept like a child, and the brave old warriors before me, who had stood the shock of many battles, also wept.
That happened in the Mass they celebrated at St. Francis Xavier before they went down and dedicated their monument.
Oh, okay.
And Father Corby admits that he swelled up when he got to the point, where are they now? It overwhelmed him with sadness.
Well, that's a question to ask, though. I mean, at such an occasion, right? Like, that would be something that would choke you up. Like,
yes.
I'm sure, I don't know. I'm just guessing that when he wrote it, he was probably like, oh, this is a good rhetorical question to ask, and then when you speak it in front of people with the gravity of the situation on your shoulders, suddenly you're like,
looking at them.
Yeah. You're like, what did I just, yeah.
And then looking into him a little more, human interest story, I'm going to combine a couple of things here. I'm a lawyer. We know what attorney-client privilege is. There's something in the law called priest-penitent privilege. And if a perp, to relieve himself spiritually, confesses to an ordained minister or something, that is supposed to be privileged.
Right.
So when I read his memoirs, I would deliberately look, because he's a chaplain all the time. You know what that means? That means that somebody's going to be executed. Who stays with him all night long to give that soldier who's going to die? He knows exactly when, and he never talks about what was said, which was right. He should not have. But I was very impressed with that. He talked about doing that as part of his duties, but he respected spiritual privacy of that moment.
That's a lot to keep in, too.
Yes. Yes.
On top of all the other stuff you've witnessed. James D. asks, the order of battle lists most of the companies as having only 2 or 4 companies. I think it means regiments, having only 2 or 4 companies. No?
Companies.
Yeah.
Most of the companies having only 2 or 4 companies?
Most of the regiments.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I know what I'm saying.
You said regiment the second time. You meant it the first time. Most of the regiments only had...
No, I said it after the second company. Okay. Let me read it the way I feel it should be read, and you tell me if I'm wrong.
You go right.
The order of battle lists most of the regiments as having only 2 to 4 companies, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I'm saying. Were they detailed on other duties, or were the regiments consolidated after their Hall losses at Antietam or Fredericksburg? Or I'm going to add a third option: were they all gone?
None of the above. They're just smaller.
They're just smaller.
They're still the Irish Brigade. That's what's left of them. We go back to the beginning of the top of the show. They were not allowed to re-recruit. So they were just smaller because they had left people, and they were just, a regiment is actually a company or 2. Maybe it's helpful for people to know a regiment is unique.
Right.
There's no other 69th New York anywhere. But every regiment has Company A, Company B, Company C. And the theory at the beginning of the Civil War is a regiment would have 1,000 soldiers. Company A through whatever, 100 apiece. There's your 1,000.
Yeah.
So what they're saying is they're down to like 50 or 60 soldiers. That's the size of 1 or 2 companies.
So, but I guess what he's asking is, though, what is it? It's 10 companies, right, that are supposed to be in a regiment. So what was one of the regiments had 90 men. So does that mean that, just for simplicity's sake, we're dealing with 9 or 10 companies with a handful of men in them? Or would they have, gotten to a point, they would have consolidated them as well? Okay.
You consolidate Company A with Company B.
Yeah.
We agree with that.
Okay. All right. Let's see. Brian Darenick says, were there any other units in the Army of the Potomac, or for that matter, the Army of Northern Virginia, that had been consolidated like the Irish Brigade due to previous losses suffered prior to Gettysburg? That's a good question.
Yes. The Garibaldi Guard.
Okay.
They're down to 4 companies here at Gettysburg.
Okay. Did not
39th New York.
TJ, I'm going to say it's Boulay. I'm going to guess that. It could be Boulette or Bullet or Ballot. There's a lot of ways to pronounce it, and I've never heard it spoken. So TJ asks, he has 2 questions. One, after reading Sears and Catton, I noticed that mentions of the Iron and Irish Brigades dissipate as the war transpires. Okay, these aren't his questions. 2, I recall Eric the producer's bitter laments... bitter. I recall Eric the producer's bitter laments of claimed bucktail regiments that really weren't. Question:
How late did the Irish Brigade exist? Did its regiments vary during that time? And if so, is their membership with Irish Brigade debated or disputed in historical memory? So in other words, you got to.
I think we covered that.
Covered that. What happened to them by the end of the war?
So the three, 63rd, 69th, 88th, they're going to get consolidated into 6 other New York regiments, and the other 2 are I think put in a different division.
So it essentially ceases to exist as the Irish Brigade.
As the Irish Brigade, yes.
But the units remain. They're just, or the men.
Yep. The units
are they even units at this point? Like,
they are enough to, to finish up the war. And I think there's
as a regiment,
the regiments.
Okay.
And I read a story. I can't remember where I came across it. That we had the discussion of the Tiffany flag, and how it may have been brought out for special occasions. One of those special occasions is the grand review at the end of the war. That flag was taken out, but I don't have any other detail than that. But it just demonstrates that those units existed, from the time of their creation in the war to the end of the war.
Peter Zach wants to know: does the Fenian Brotherhood exploit the Irish veterans after the Civil War to invade Canada?
John's got a whole book on it over there.
I just came across this after I did my posting on Gettysburg Daily. This is a 2019 book. When the Irish invaded Canada, they not invaded 1 time, not 2 times. They tried to invade 5 times. The final time, irony of ironies, the Union Army stopping them was commanded by George Gordon Meade.
Oh.
President Grant is saying, stop. We have relationships with that independent country. We can't have Americans going up there. It was, I would say, the flip. The Fenians were loyal to the case of the Irish Republic, then called the Irish Republic Brotherhood, IRA. They want training, and they want to go back to fight the British. But before they do, they get the idea, let's take a British possession and trade it for free Ireland. So
how many men are we talking that are trying to take Canada?
A couple thousand. Every one of these comments is, it was a wild dream. It was disorganized. It was always infiltrated by spies.
Right.
And it didn't work very well.
Yeah.
But they did, a wink and a wink, get muskets from somebody who had surplus muskets. They were never blessed by the U.S. government. Right. They were stopped by the U.S. government. But the Fenians were, They were a private society, roughly analogous, to the Masons.
Okay.
It was a secret handshake. You had to be invited to be in. You had a vow of silence. James McKay Rorty, I didn't finish Battery B first. He didn't go, but he was killed in the Third Day's Cannonade. And since he was part of them and he was Irish, they put these 2 plaques on the side of the monument to honor him. It says James McKay Rorty, and this side is artillery. There was no artillery there.
Right.
But they did that out of loyalty to him. So here's the head of the Fenian Brotherhood who's killed. So whatever that word was, they forced them to. No, they didn't have to be forced to. These
exploit.
No, they didn't exploit them. These guys wanted to do that. Now, it's a crazy idea, but their idea was, let's take it. Now, by the way, this is a trivia thing. I think it was July 1st, 1867. Until then, what we call Canada was British North America. On that date, it became Canada, but it was still part of the British Empire.
Okay.
So they thought they could take it and say, hi, we have this. Would you give us Ireland?
Now we just use tariffs, as you know, Matt.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Grant O'Brien from Australia asks, did Marr regret resigning?
Yes. Yes, he did.
All right.
Yes,
Next question.
Well, I may have some words on that if you would like.
Sure, let's hear it. I would regret resigning. Because I often make a rash move like that. My Irish temper will get up and I'll say, fine, then F you, I don't need you. And I go walk away and I go, why the hell did I do that? And then my Irish pride won't let me go back and say,
hey, I was wrong.
Bless your heart.
Yeah.
So within weeks, I'm reading from a book called The Greatest Brigade, How the Irish Brigade Cleared the Way to Victory in the American Civil War. Thomas J. Grogwell, G-R-A-U-G-H-Well. And I'm reading from page 165, The Decline and Fall of General Meagher. Within weeks of resigning, he resigned around the 7th, 8th of May, so right after Chancellorsville. We exist no more, he's lamenting. He regretted it. He wrote Stanton and said, can I please come back? Stanton didn't reply. The Army kept him in limbo for a full year. Spring of 64, he was called to Washington, asked to return to duty. I upset at this. He was not given any assignment at all except go meet the Irish at City Point. He arrived on August 12th and promptly got drunk and stayed drunk until August 18th, until he was informed that the U.S. Army would no longer provide him quarters. He was now humiliated. September 4, 64, anniversary formation of the Irish Brigade, and Meagher signed, third anniversary, signed himself the task of organizing a formal celebration. He builds a thing, they have like the steeplechase and all that. He praises the men who never disgraced themselves in battle, never lost regimental colors to the enemy, had always proven themselves valiant to Ireland and true patriotic Americans. Wrapped up his remarks and called for 3 cheers of Hancock. For Hancock, he's no dummy. September 11th, Grant orders, that Meagher should be assigned to Nashville. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
It was a mixed blessing. His resignation was rescinded. He would serve under Sherman, whom he had called earlier an envenomed martinet, which Sherman heard about. Sherman says, you're now a provisional brigade commander of troops that were wounded, and you're going to do guard duty on the railroad between Chattanooga and Chancellors and Knoxville. He failed to arrange for moving the troops, and the Army had enough of that until he was relieved, and his military career is founded on February 24, 1865. With Stanton's approval, Grant ordered him relieved from duty, back to New York, you're out of the Army. And somehow he becomes the military governor of Montana. And here's a trivia question for you and all your people.
Okay.
Where is the only statue of Thomas Francis Meagher of the Sword? In front of the capital of Helena, Montana.
Oh, Montana, that makes sense.
Only statue. And there's a mystery, but he's supposed to be getting some arms to do his duty for this territory. He gets on a ship. There was an election. His party wins. There are threats against him. I'm just telling you the facts that are out there. And he's waiting for this shipment of arms, legitimate. Mm-hmm. And he's on this ship going down the river, and he was either drunk, upset, or slipped. But he slips off the stateroom railing on the back of the ship. Somebody hears a quick cry and a splash. His body was never found.
Oh.
And they do not know whether it was an intentional murder by a political enemy, he was drunk and slipped, or he just got up in the middle of the night and fell off the railing. But that's how his life ended.
Was he a Republican or a Democrat?
He was a Democrat who voted Republican.
Interesting. Okay. Like the old Reagan Democrats, they you hear of all the time. Yeah. Like that. He was one of those. Okay, moving on to Rick Scarce. He says there was a lot of anti-Irish racism in the antebellum era. What, if any, role did that kind of Protestant nativism play in the formation of Irish regiments? Was there pressure on Irish Americans to prove their loyalty to the U.S.? Similarly, how purely Irish were the Irish Brigade regiments? We kind of touched on that. Also, are many details known about the decision to hire William O'Donovan to sculpt the Irish Brigade monument? So you talked about that real quick.
I looked into it, and it turns out it was totally coincidence.
Okay. But as far as those other questions go about the anti-Irish sentiments, because, what was it? They were afraid that they were going to be more loyal to the Pope. Is that?
That was part of it.
Okay.
They're loyal to another government, another religion, and they're going to make the country papal.
Yeah.
That was what was called the know-nothings in our country. 20s, 30s, 40s, they were called the know-nothings because they didn't like immigrants, not just Irish. And if they committed a crime against them and the police would question them, I know nothing. And they were actually the American Party, and their zenith was 1854. They got some people in the House of Representatives. They sort of dropped off after that. So I'm trying to deal with the question, were they pressured into doing what they did because of the know-nothings? And I think it said, or are they trying to show that I would say they were they were resenting that, but they were more interested in learning combat arms to free Ireland, and they were interested in proving their loyalty to this country.
So they're interested in learning combat arms to free Ireland while also proving their loyalty to this country. So what's the big plan? Was it to learn how to fight, to go back to Ireland?
Yes.
Free it and then come back here?
No, free Ireland. Those who were the true Fenians. I want to go back to Ireland. I want to free Ireland.
Yeah.
And then
they were coming here for the benefits of a military education, sort of on the job training, so that they can go back and. Is that the idea there?
That was the primary motivation at the beginning. So what happens is a lot of get killed.
Yeah.
And secondly, they realize, well, I'm going to fight for this country because I have religious freedom. I have the Bill of Rights. For 700 years, we've been put upon by the British.
Right.
You couldn't be on a grand jury. You couldn't hold office. You had to divide your plot only your sons. If you wanted to sell it, you had to become an Anglican.
So
those are called the penal laws.
It's a bigger mountain to climb fixing Ireland
than it is
to stay here and become a part of American society.
Or steal Canada.
Or steal Canada, right, of course.
Those were so there are a bunch of motivations is my answer.
I'd rather blame Canada for every ill ever. Jason Hamby says, what specific features of 19th century life led to the Irish Brigade being lionized and the Dutchmen being vilified? Was it all battlefield performance, or were there other factors at play? I mean, I would guess that the first thing would be that if you dared question the fighting abilities and bravery of the Irish in a bar, you'd get clocked. So there's probably a self-preservation. Oh, no, yeah, you guys were the greatest, But that's my guess. Why? What do you think that is? Because it is kind of interesting. Why? They're both immigrant groups.
Yeah, I mean, I think we addressed it earlier on.
I don't think we did sufficiently, Christopher.
Well, okay.
But why?
We're really good friends here.
yeah, we're good. I think that the at the basic level, and I've never served as a soldier. But at the basic level, soldiers will respect soldiers that fight.
Mm-hmm.
I think these groups, amongst others, were there was racism.
Sure.
Can you blame everything just on racism alone? I don't think so. I think
only if you're small-minded.
Men in both the German units. In the Garibaldi, in the Irish units, these men, and I think John alluded to it, they may not have been properly led at times.
Yes.
Trying to withstand a flank attack by Stonewall Jackson.
Yeah.
I don't care what your
wrong place, wrong time.
Wrong place, wrong time.
And on the first day at Gettysburg, north of town.
Right.
North of town.
So two big battles in a row.
And
that's
they
happening.
retreated.
Right.
So, I think, while if you search hard enough, I'm sure you can find examples. I don't think it was systemic, but, the racism against the Irish, the racism against other immigrants, certainly goes well into the next century.
Sure. Do you think though that the memory kind of disparaging the Germans and praising the Irish has less to do with what actually happened in the war and more to do with what was said after the war by the veterans themselves and historians?
I don't recall reading anything. I'm not the worldwide expert. I don't recall the Irish ever saying we're better than you or anything like that.
No, I wouldn't. That's not what I mean, though.
Oh.
I mean, could it have been that the Irish might not have said we're better than you, but look at what we did, whereas the Germans of the 11th Corps might have been a little more modest, or I don't know if modest is the word, but not as braggadocious, not as proud, perhaps.
Well, there's a word called blarney, and the Irish are good at that.
Right.
But their record, I hate it when somebody says the record speaks for itself, but if you don't read it, it's not going to talk to you.
Right.
And the record shows that twice in big battles, they retreat. Now, that it wasn't their fault that they were making dinner and nobody listened to. Somebody is circling you, sir, and the 11th Corps commander didn't order flankers, skirmishers out. And then every time you read about day one, even though they took the high ground of Blockers Knoll, it was an extended position. They shouldn't have been out there. Mm-hmm. And those soldiers that attacked them were good soldiers. And there were fights where these guys tried to fight very well.
Yeah.
But if you have troops in front of you on your right, on your left,
what are you going to do?
You're going to get go.
Right.
So I just would question the word lionized. I understand what he was saying. But
I don't know. Maybe it's because I was raised in North Jersey, and we were very close to New York, and there's a very rich Irish heritage up there. And I'm just thinking of all the parades that I went to. I just thought it was, I assumed that every fire department had pipes and drums around the country, and then I find out they don't. But and the police department, but there's an Irish heritage in those fields, and it's funny to me how like you were pointing out before, the 69th New York, the demographic has changed, but the heritage is still there.
Exactly,
and it's very Irish.
Yes.
Same with the fire department. Same with the police department. The demographic has changed, but it's a very Irish heritage and culture that they
go back to how they were treated when they came here. What skill did they bring? Nothing.
Right.
We're hungry.
Yeah.
All we did was grow potatoes. So what a great number of the men do become police officers and firefighters.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that tradition is in those departments because that was the only, quote, job they could get.
My father had in his office a sign on the wall that said, "Help wanted, Irish need not apply."
No Irish need apply.
Yeah. And when I remember I was probably 11 or 12 when I saw it, and I laughed. And I was like, oh,
my
that's
grandparents
funny.
that lived through the Depression remember seeing those signs.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I remember my grandfather telling me that too when he was a little boy. And when my dad told me that was real, I was like, I didn't get it. I don't get that. What are you talking about? Because by the time I came around, we were just normal, regular old Americans. It wasn't, it wasn't like you're anything different than anybody else. And it was, I never understood why there was that anti-Irish stuff. Because I just was like, well, everybody was European. Who cares? But then, you grow up and you learn that doesn't matter. If you're a different group, you're a different group. Yeah. All right. I think that is it. Those are all the questions, guys. I appreciate you doing this. I appreciate our phone calls today. Thank you, Mark Maritata, for calling in and having a knockdown, drag out fight about flags.
We look forward to hearing more on the flags.
I have a suggestion for him. I have the painting Pride of Erin by
Trelawney.
No.
Dale Gallen.
Thank you.
Oh, Dale.
You're welcome.
Okay.
And he researches all of his.
Right.
And he has the flags the way I described them.
Right.
The blue 116 Pennsylvania 28th Mash and the 3 second flags. And my memory is November 62, the second flags were issued, but they didn't get to the field. It's like one time before Mark. So I think that he and his wife are I've several of their paintings. I think as an artist, if you called him and said, I've done research, and look at the research he did.
Oh, that's a good idea.
On Pride of Erin.
Yeah.
It would be artist to artist asking each other questions because they want to be accurate.
Yeah, good. I like that. All right. Well, there you go, Mark. Give him a call. Otherwise, that's it. Chris, thank you very much for coming along. Thank you, patrons, for submitting your questions. Thank you, Mikey, in the back there. You want to say goodbye to the audience?
And thank John for
Goodbye to the audience.
You're saving him for the end.
Yeah, and then thank you, John, and welcome to Addressing Gettysburg. And I hope you come on again. I enjoyed talking to you today.
Thank you so much.
And by the way, thank you for your service. I mean, this is pretty impressive. Nothing makes you feel like a loser than to read a resume like that. No, I'm telling. I'm honest. I mean, geez.
Give me my paper back.
There you go. All right. Thank you, everybody, for watching and listening.
Yeah, we done?
We're done. Oh, well, yeah, we're done. Well, I can take it. We're done. What do you want to show? Go ahead.
How in the service and the government, how they pick an expression and they say, where do they come from?
Sure, yeah.
This is called the DUI.
Okay.
And it's instead of saying the crest or emblem, it means distinguished unit identity.
Okay.
So this is the crest of the 69th New York.
Oh, all right.
And it's their DUI, but there's the 69th New York. These are two Irish wolfhounds.
I'll show it to the camera.
Okay, and then you can't read this very well. Gentle when stroked, fierce when provoked.
That's what I said to my girlfriend the other night. Here we go. There we go. So the 69, the Wolfhounds, and then this is the gentle.
When stroked and fierce when provoked.
And then the Fighting 69. That's pretty neat.
Yeah, I thought you'd like that.
I like that. And that's called the DUI.
The whole United States Army says instead of using the word crest or emblem, that's the official. So I thought.
Crest or emblem sounds are
reasonable.
It does. But is that reserved for civilian versions of that, or is that just we decided to do it differently?
They say, "What's your DUI?" And they say, "Oh, here it is." And what's your crest? I would imagine the Screaming Eagle for the 101st Airborne is their DUI.
Sure. Other people say, "Oh, got a July 4th after a barbecue." And they're like, "What?
DUI? Yeah,
my DUI."
That's what I meant. It's silly.
It is a silly one.
Silly to choose those,
especially in relation to the Irish, because it's. What are you saying about us? Right? We're drunk.
That's a stretch.
Okay. All right, we're done. Have a good one, everybody.
Thank you.
If you like this podcast and what we're doing here, please like, share, and subscribe. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of the upcoming interesting history podcasts here at Addressing Gettysburg.
Our hearts so stout have got us fame, for soon 'tis known from whence we came. Wherever we go, they dread the name of Gary Owen in glory. Instead of spa or drink down ale and pay the reckoning on the nail, no man for debt shall go to jail from Gary Owen in glory. Instead of spa or drink down ale and pay the reckoning on the nail, no man for debt shall go to